Maggie Stephens' stutter makes school especially hard. She will do almost anything to avoid speaking in class or calling attention to herself. So when her unsympathetic father threatens to send her away for so-called treatment, she reluctantly agrees to her mother's intervention plan. A few weeks in the fresh air of Wildoak Forest, visiting a grandfather she hardly knows. It is there, in an extraordinary twist of fate, that she encounters an abandoned snow leopard cub, an exotic gift to a wealthy Londoner that proved too wild to domesticate. But once the cub's presence is discovered by others, danger follows, and Maggie soon realizes that time is running out, not only for the leopard, but for herself and the forest as well. Here is a preview of Wild Oak by C. Harrington. This book was a winner in 2023 of the Schneider Family Book Award, which is presented by the American Library Association. Maggie pressed the tip of one finger against the point of her pencil. It was keen and sharp. But was it sharp enough? Surely. Her stomach felt hollow and shaky inside. In fact, everything felt shaky, even her legs. She rolled the yellow pencil between her thumb and forefinger. She flipped and twisted it, tapping one end against the surface of her desk. It was the only way out. Hilary Muir was next. She started reading at the top of page 32, second paragraph, fourth sentence in. Her voice was crisp and light. It flowed like music. Maggie bit her lip. If she could just get through the first line without stuttering, maybe the rest would follow and then she could put away the pencil. No, she would block. She was bound to. Some of the words would come out fine, and then suddenly they wouldn't. The air would catch, her head would jerk around, her mouth would lock open. She would blink repeatedly, and every single person in the room would stare and laugh. She squeezed her eyes shut. Laughing mouths and pointing fingers crowded in. She couldn't bear it. And then everyone would know, and she would have to move schools. Again. She opened her eyes and glanced around. The classroom windows were locked. The door was closed. Old radiators clinked along the bare cream walls. The air was hot and stuffy. Louisa Walker sat on her right, listening, reading, following along with her ruler. They had never really talked, but she had always seemed kind. Maybe this time would be different, Maggie thought desperately. Maybe Louisa wouldn't laugh. Or Nicola. Nicola Robinson was kind, too. Lots of people were kind. There was a pause, a shuffling of feet, the rustling of pages. Thank you, Hilary. Well read. Beautiful, in fact. Margaret Stephens, please start at the bottom of page 34. Miss Bryant's voice sounded muffled and far away as it drifted across the classroom. Margaret, she repeated. A stifled giggle. Somebody was laughing already, and she hadn't even opened her mouth. Maggie could feel the wool of her sweater tight around her neck. Margaret Stephens, are you listening to me? She stared down at the page, at the printed words, curling, pointed, full of sharp edges like a mouthful of fish hooks. Miss Bryant's question hung in the air. Everyone was staring now, waiting for her to start. It's the only way out. Maggie's heart thudded against her ribcage. She gripped the pencil. She pulled it back. Now. She drove the keenly sharpened point deep down into the soft palm of her left hand. She let out a gasp of shocked pain. Tears scalded her cheeks. Unsteadily, she rose to her feet and held up her hand. The pencil protruded from it like a grotesque, oversized splinter. She trembled. Beads of scarlet blood escaped from the wound and dropped to the floor. Oh my goodness, Margaret, what on earth just happened? Are you all right? Quickly, you're excused. Get yourself to Nurse Nora right away. Go! Maggie ran out of the classroom, ignoring the sweep of horrified and disgusted faces. Nobody was laughing now. She kept running, holding her own hand, footsteps echoing along the corridors of Southam Primary. But more than the pain, she felt a rush of relief. Nurse Nora was a large, plump woman with small eyes, a navy blue uniform, and starched white cap. She moved with a cumbersome gait from one side of the room to the other. Margaret Stephens. Again? What is it this time? Maggie looked down. She held out her hand without saying anything. Well, how on earth did that happen? Speak up, child. Maggie continued to look down. Her excuses for being sent out had been getting more and more extreme. There was no point in trying to explain. Nurse Nora, of all people, would never understand. You've been in here 6 times in 3 weeks. It's not normal. Nurse Nora sighed deeply. You're almost 12 years old, Margaret. You can't possibly be this clumsy all the time. Silence. Nurse Nora glared. Maggie swallowed hard. It really hurt now, the throbbing in her hand. So once again, you've got nothing to say for yourself. What a surprise. Maggie stared at the toes of her shoes. She had not polished them, and they were scuffed and worn-looking. Why couldn't people see that none of this was a choice? She didn't choose to stutter. It wasn't a question of trying harder or breathing more slowly or whatever. She stuttered and couldn't help it, no matter what she tried to do or not do. Sometimes the words came out fine, but mostly they didn't. The room suddenly felt small and cramped. She glanced at the door. Sit down, said Nurse Nora, following her gaze and pointing at a stool. You're not going anywhere. And this has been a preview of Wildoak.